Before I begin, I want to make something clear. This isn't a story I ever planned to share. In fact, what I'm about to tell you could end whatever's left of my career, maybe even worse. For years, I worked with one of the most secretive branches of NASA's Recovery Division. We weren't the scientists who discovered new worlds or the astronauts you see smiling on television. We were the ones who cleaned up afterward, the ones who retrieved the capsules that came screaming back through the atmosphere carrying things no one else was supposed to see. You've probably seen the headlines about samples from asteroids, harmless rocks, ancient dust, all in the name of science. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes when we send something out there, something sends something back. This is the part of the mission report they never released. The part that was deleted, redacted, buried. And I'm only telling it because I think whatever was inside that capsule didn't stay behind. I used to work for NASA's Recovery Division, the team responsible for retrieving re-entry capsules after deep space missions. It's not glamorous work. We don't sit in Houston calling out, "Go for landing." We're the ones standing in the middle of nowhere, waiting for a fireball to fall from the sky. The day the capsule came back from the asteroid mission felt like history in the making. We'd spent years preparing for it. Every procedure had been rehearsed, every variable accounted for. The capsule itself had traveled millions of miles, collecting dust and fragments from a carbon-rich asteroid material older than Earth itself. I remember watching the sky turn orange as it pierced through the atmosphere. It came in fast, nearly 27,000 miles per hour, glowing like a miniature sun before its parachute deployed. For a moment, all of us stood still. When it landed soft and perfect, the ground crew cheered. I did too. We were touching something no human had ever touched before. That was before we realized we hadn't just brought home rock and dust. The recovery went exactly as planned. We approached in full hazmat gear, measuring air composition radiation, every precaution you can imagine. The capsule was still warm to the touch. There were no cracks, no leaks. On the surface, it was flawless. Inside, there was supposed to be only sealed sample canisters. But as we prepared to load it into the transport crate, I heard something, a soft tapping. At first, I thought it was thermal expansion metal cooling after re-entry. But the pattern repeated. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap. No one else seemed to hear it. Or maybe they ignored it. We logged it as a structural anomaly and continued the checklist. But when I leaned closer, I swear the sound stopped like it was aware of me. We loaded the capsule into the sterile transport unit and shipped it to the clean facility. That night I couldn't sleep. In my head, I kept hearing that sound slow and deliberate, as if something inside had been testing the walls. Inside the facility, everything was silence and glass. White lights filtered air, and the hum of machines that never stopped. The capsule sat in the center of the chamber, sealed under negative pressure. We watched from behind reinforced glass as the engineers began disassembly. The instruments detected faint movement micro-vibrations coming from within the sample canisters. The lead scientist shrugged it off as pressure release. He said, "It's just gas escaping. Perfectly normal." But I could see his hand tremble slightly as he wrote it down. Hours passed. The more they opened, the quieter the room became. The chatter stopped. The excitement drained. Something about the samples was wrong. not visually but atmospherically. The air seemed heavier, like a storm was waiting to break. When they finally extracted the main container, I swear I heard breathing. Not from anyone in the room, from inside the steel cylinder itself. Slow, wet, measured. I didn't say anything. I just watched as they sealed it inside a new isolation unit. And for the first time that day, I felt something I couldn't explain. Not fear exactly, but a kind of reverence. Like standing too close to something that shouldn't exist. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. I'd finished my shift, but something made me go back. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was guilt for doubting what I'd heard. When I reached the observation window, the room was dim. Only one light was on. One of the technicians, Owens, was inside. He was standing beside the isolation unit, staring at it. His back was to me. I tapped on the glass to get his attention, but he didn't move. Then he turned his head slowly, and I saw his face. His eyes were wrong. Too wide, too dark, the pupils stretching, swallowing the color around them. He opened his mouth, like he wanted to speak, but no sound came out, only a faint clicking noise, like chitin on glass. I tried to call security, but my radio just hissed with static. Inside the chamber, Owens collapsed to his knees, clutching his face. Something moved beneath his skin, tiny bulges racing under his cheeks across his forehead. Then his eyes shifted. They didn't burst or bleed. They crawled. The surface of his eyes rippled, and I realized the pupils weren't growing. They were splitting. Dozens of small, glistening shapes unfurled from them, moving like insects. And when one of them detached, small, wet, and alive, and scuttled across the floor, I knew this wasn't a nightmare. It was evolution. I ran. The alarms didn't sound until minutes later. By then, half the team had already seen what Owens became. Some tried to help him. Others tried to run. The things the eyes moved fast. They weren't just crawling. They were learning. I saw one leap, just a flicker in the corner of my vision, and then a man screamed. He fell convulsing, clutching at his own eyes. When he looked up again, his stare was empty, like glass filled with black oil. And then, he smiled. I don't remember how I made it out of the room. I just remember the lights flickering red, the doors sealing the muffled pounding of fists from the other side. Outside security teams surrounded the facility. They forced us onto the ground, shouting orders we couldn't understand. Someone vomited beside me. Someone else kept whispering a prayer over and over until his voice cracked. No one would tell us what was happening. No one ever did. They took us to quarantine. White rooms, no windows, constant monitoring. Every hour, a voice came through the speaker asking if we'd experienced ocular irritation or auditory distortions. We all said no, because we thought saying yes meant we'd never leave. I overheard one of the doctors mention bio-optical replication. Another said symbiotic adaptation. They stopped talking when they realized I was awake. Eventually, they let me go. Signed the papers, made me promise. Silence told me I'd seen a chemical stress event. I believed them for a while. But last week, I found something. A fragment, no bigger than a pebble. It was embedded in the cuff of my suit, the one I wore that night. When I held it under the light, it shimmered, not like rock, but like tissue. And for a moment, I thought I saw something behind the reflection. Something looking back. I threw it into the sink, turned on the garbage disposal, and walked away. But later that night, when I turned off the lights, I saw a faint glow leaking from the drain. It pulsed slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. I haven't told anyone, I can still hear the tapping sometimes. Soft, measured, patient. It's been getting louder. And last night, I swear I heard it from inside the walls. I've changed my name since that day. I don't live anywhere near the old facility. Sometimes I convince myself it's over, that the glow from the train was just a trick of my tired eyes. But every few weeks, when the house is silent, I hear it again. That same steady rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap. Like it's trying to find its way out. Or maybe in. NASA's official statement said the capsule burned up during transport, that no biological samples were recovered, that everyone involved is in good health. But I know that's a lie, because I still see the reflection sometimes in mirrors, in windows, even in my own eyes. When I stare too long, something looks back. If you ever see a falling star, bright and slow, with no tail behind it, don't make a wish, don't take a picture, just get inside. Because maybe it isn't a meteor, maybe it's something coming home.